Remember when we spent 8 videos talking about Zsa Zsa Gabor and her many, many marriages? I do. Zsa Zsa Gabor's life was defined by lovers, luxury, and lies. For someone who lived a life so publicly, her penchant for fibbing was an attempt to keep an air of mystery. I mean, she was the first of her kind, famous for being famous. And if we've learned anything over the last 8 videos regarding her life and marriages, it's that she was absurd, but in the best kind of way. I mean, she had an FBI file that was comprised of an estimated 3,000 pages. That's what happens when you flippantly claim you danced with a certain small German with an equally small mustache, not once, but twice. She was philanthropic, supporting vulnerable populations with both time and money. Her exuberant personality led to a career in Hollywood that spanned over 4 decades, with many of her roles based on herself. Her memoir is a laundry list of men who loved her, like John F. Kennedy and Elvis, princes and kings. Many of her tales seem too fantastical to be true, and it's possible that they actually were. She came by her hyperbolic ways honestly, though. Jolie Gabor, Zsa Zsa's mother, was also quite the fibber. They would lie about everything, Jolie's biographer Cindy Adams said. They have always lived with no reality. There was never any truth to anything. Adding, the only way you can tell the age of a Gabor is from the rings around their gums, alluding to the fact that they often fudged their ages. But what do you expect from someone who famously said, "I don't remember anybody's name. How do you think the darling thing got started?" While Zsa Zsa's formative years were filled with the bright lights of Hollywood and the sparkle of all the diamonds she never gave back, her last few years weren't nearly as shiny. As we know, her final and longest marriage to Frederick von Anhalt was based on a foundation of scams and lies, and it's really where her troubles started. In 1989, Zsa Zsa was arrested after assaulting a police officer in Beverly Hills during a traffic stop which would be dubbed the slap heard round the world. Officer Paul Kramer had stopped Zsa Zsa after noticing her expired tags. She claimed that there was no way she'd forgotten to renew the very expensive tags on her very expensive automobile. And while he was checking for further violations, she drove away. When he stopped her again, she slapped him. She claimed it was in self-defense. He had pulled her out of the car aggressively. He said it was unprovoked. She was fined $2,350 for slapping the officer, $352 for driving without a license, and another $235 for driving with an open container of alcohol, her flask containing Jack Daniels. And that was just the beginning of her court case, which was described as nothing short of a circus. She continually contradicted herself throughout the trial, claimed the police videotapes of her using vulgar language were doctored, and hurled accusations at Paul Kramer, claiming that he had several gay lovers. Which was a weird accusation to make. I'm not sure why she thought it would have any bearing on anything, especially considering she was married to Frederick, who was the prince of cruising WeHo. The judge, meanwhile, accused Zsa Zsa of milking the criminal justice system for her own publicity. The trial went on for weeks, and she ended up with 3 days in jail, 120 hours of community service, and was forced to pay fines and retribution upwards of $12,000. She also had to undergo a psych evaluation. Her marriage of convenience led to her mugshot and added to her already strained relationship with daughter Francesca Hilton. Francesca didn't have much of a relationship with her father, founder of Hilton Hotels, Conrad Hilton. She said that she spent Christmases with him and had the occasional upscale lunch, but that they weren't close. When he passed in 1979, he left her $100,000 from his estate, which is around $448,000 today, and his estate was valued around $200 million at the time, which is close to $900 million today. He had willed the bulk of his estate to charity, and Francesca attempted to challenge the will but lost. Her half-brother Baron Hilton, who was acting CEO of the company at that time, also challenged the estate and walked away with voting interest and income rights to a bulk of the Hilton hotel stock. Despite being photographed with Zsa Zsa and her many husbands, Francesca was not surrounded by wealth like her half-siblings. She worked for a living, which included acting, stand-up comedy, and she also worked for her father's charitable foundation. In 2005, Fred sued Francesca, accusing her of fraud and forgery. The suit was dismissed, though, and Zsa Zsa didn't appear in court, nor did she ever indicate via an affidavit that she wanted to be part of the lawsuit. And Francesca used her stand-up act to take digs at Fred, saying things like, "My mother wanted to be a princess, so she married an evil queen." And her relationship with her mother remained strained. Francesca continued to struggle financially, living between a low-end apartment when she could afford the weekly rent and her car when she couldn't. At the age of 67, Francesca suffered a massive stroke. She passed away at Cedars-Sinai shortly after on January 5th, 2015. Zsa Zsa had no idea that her daughter had passed. She was also struggling with her own health issues and was confined to a wheelchair after her 2002 car accident and 2 strokes of her own, as well as reportedly dealing with dementia, and was maybe in a coma. I'm not quite sure what was going on. Fred tried to take possession of Francesca's body and was thankfully denied. After staying in the morgue for several days, her brother Baron had her cremated and she was interred at Westwood Village Memorial Park Cemetery near her aunt, Eva Gabor. Fred tried to use Carrie Fisher's passing to justify not telling Zsa Zsa about Francesca, saying that Carrie's mother, Debbie, passed away days after her daughter, and he knew the same thing would happen to Zsa Zsa if he told her. I think he's full of shit. Zsa Zsa coincidentally passed away 9 days before Carrie Fisher. In July of 2010, they thought that it was the end for Zsa Zsa. She went into the hospital after falling out of bed and breaking her hip, along with several other bones. She received last rites, but ultimately survived. Then, in January 2011, right before her 94th birthday, she had her right leg amputated above the knee due to poor circulation in an ulcerated area. She was hospitalized again shortly thereafter and allegedly fell into a coma. That May, she was rushed to the hospital again due to an issue with her feeding tube. It was the second time she had been hospitalized that month after battling pneumonia. Zsa Zsa's ailments had led Francesca to file a petition in March of 2012 requesting an independent conservatorship be set up to watch over her mother's health and finances. She believed that many of her mother's issues had to do with negligence on the Prince of Bel-Air's part. She'd also recently learned that Fred had taken out a $700,000 loan and that there was a notice of default on her mother's home as Fred hadn't been paying the mortgage. Francesca wanted the court to have oversight to ensure that whoever was at the helm of her mother's care, whether it be Francesca, Fred, or a third party, was protecting Zsa Zsa's best interest. Now, a judge did grant conservatorship, but made Fred the temporary conservator of Zsa Zsa's finances, which he was only allowed to use for his wife's care, and not the lavish parties he had been throwing. Or, spending $68,000 on a billboard to celebrate their anniversary. Now, Zsa Zsa was also a victim of Bernie Madoff's Ponzi scheme and was revealed to have lost between $7 to $10 million in 2009 when the scandal broke. Do we really think 90-year-old partially paralyzed Zsa Zsa made the decision to invest with Bernie? Gee, I wonder why Fred didn't tell Zsa Zsa about Francesca's death. After celebrating her 99th birthday in February of 2016, Fred claimed that he was going to move Zsa Zsa to Hungary for her 100th birthday, as that's where she wanted to live out the rest of her days. But then, that December, just 2 months before her 100th birthday, Zsa Zsa passed away from cardiac arrest at Ronald Reagan UCLA Medical Center. She allegedly had spent the last 5 years of her life in a coma on life support, which is interesting because why would it have mattered if he told her about Francesca if she was in a coma? Her funeral was held on December 30th in a Catholic ceremony in Beverly Hills. While her ashes were originally interred at the Westwood Village Memorial Park Cemetery, where her sister Eva and daughter Francesca were laid to rest, Fred dug her back up 5 years later and had her reinterred in the artist section of Kerepesi Cemetery in Budapest. He flew her remains in their own first-class seat with her passport, claiming he was fulfilling her wish to return to Hungary. But then why didn't you just do that in the first place? Could it have been because you became irrelevant, Fred, and were looking for a reason to go back to the media? Like how you sold off all of her stuff in 2018 and splashed that over the front page of every news outlet that would let you? Crazy. I'm not going to lie, covering this series has been deeply depressing. Zsa Zsa was so beautiful and delightfully absurd. She overcame so much to earn her success. She was whip-smart and funny. She owned her many marriages, often cracking jokes like, "I'm a marvelous housekeeper. Every time I leave a man, I keep his house." But in the end, those close to her painted a picture of a bitter, mean woman. A woman who had once posed outside of Dior House in Paris, but had since been banned from her favorite stores on Rodeo Drive for trying to return worn clothes. A woman who wanted to be perceived as strong and independent, but ultimately let this kind of man overshadow her, stealing every ounce of her life. I hope you enjoyed Zsa Zsa's January. Big thank you to the lovely cult member who named this series. Please let yourself be known so that you can receive your awesome flowers. If you enjoyed this video and the others, please save them and share them with your friends. It really does help spread the good word of the cult. And don't forget to follow me over on the gram, the tube of the U, just in case. Good day, and may the cult be with you.